When you ask a cold older man for a divorce, he regrets it. Bad end warning. Ling Yao, I thought Ji Hanchuan would take me to his college friend Lu Yuan's wedding. It was a Saturday. I got up early and ironed my newly bought dark blue dress. Ji Hanchuan had once said this color suited my complexion, though that was likely just one of the few polite comments he had made in 3 years. I finished my makeup, sprayed on that bottle of 5-figure perfume he gave me, and sat in the living room waiting for him. By 10 in the morning, the roar of a sports car came from downstairs. I stood on the balcony and watched Ji Hanchuan drive away from the residential complex alone in that silver gray Porsche. No phone call, no message, not even a glance upstairs at the wife waiting for him. The wedding must have been lively. When Ji Hanchuan came home at 11 o'clock at night reeking of alcohol, there was a boutonniere pinned to his suit lapel given by the groom. Why didn't you take me to Lu Yuan's wedding today? I stood at the entryway, taking the suit jacket he took off. He frowned, a flash of confusion crossing those handsome eyes, as if he couldn't understand why I would ask such an obvious question. Weren't you going shopping with your best friend this weekend? He walked towards the bathroom while untying his tie. The wedding was boring. It's a good thing you didn't go. In that moment my heart felt like it was being gripped by a cold hand. I watched the bathroom door close, heard the sound of water starting, and suddenly realized, this person never had me in his heart. He didn't even remember that my best friend moved out of this city a long time ago, or rather, he simply didn't care. The water stopped. Ji Hanchuan came out shirtless, water droplets sliding down his defined abdominal muscles. He didn't even glance at me, walking straight towards the bedroom. This is our marriage, existing in name only. In his eyes, I wasn't even worth as much attention as a potted plant in his office. I returned to the guest room. Yes, we had been sleeping in separate rooms for 3 years of marriage. I took out a document bag from the depths of the bedside table. Inside were the divorce papers I had secretly prepared over the last 3 months. The next day was Sunday. Ji Hanchuan went to work overtime as usual. After hearing the sound of him leaving, I dialed my lawyer's number. Miss Ling, are you sure you want to file for divorce now? The lawyer asked on the other end of the line. The G Group's prenuptial agreement isn't very favorable to you. I know, I looked at the city under the sunlight outside the window. But I want to live for myself for once. Ji Hanchuan wouldn't know that this wasn't a momentary impulse. Over these 3 years, every forgotten birthday, every broken dinner promise, every perfunctory, yeah, oh, whatever, were like water droplets slowly filling the container in my heart. Now, it has finally overflowed. Monday morning, I put the couple's coffee mugs we bought together into the depths of the cupboard and replaced them with a mug I used back in college. When Ji Hanchuan got up, he glanced at it but said nothing. That same night I canceled the financial magazine we subscribed to together. Ji Hanchuan asked about it casually during dinner on Wednesday. I said, since you have them at the office anyway, I won't renew the subscription for home. He nodded and continued looking at his tablet, seemingly oblivious to anything unusual. Thursday, I organized all the jewelry Ji Hanchuan had given me over the years into a velvet box and placed it in the most conspicuous spot on the vanity. When he came home Friday night, the box remained untouched. He hadn't even entered my room. The weekend, I started sorting my books and clothes. I intentionally left the wardrobe door, which was half empty, open. When Ji Hanchuan passed by, he just frowned. Are you donating clothes? Just ask the housekeeper to come collect them. I smiled and didn't answer. That night I watched him elegantly cut his steak from across the dining table, thinking that this proud man probably never imagined that one day I would leave. The second week, my actions became even more obvious. I took down our wedding photo from the living room wall and replaced it with a landscape painting I bought during a business trip to Paris. Ji Hanchuan stared at the painting for a few seconds, then turned to me. Where is the photo? Put it away, I said calmly. I always felt it was a bit tacky hanging in the living room. He looked at me again, a trace of complexity I couldn't read in his eyes, but ultimately said nothing. Wednesday was our 3rd wedding anniversary. Ironically, what I received were flowers from the florist. Ji Hanchuan's secretary would order a bouquet of roses to be delivered to the house every year, yet he himself never showed up. I put the flowers in a vase, took a photo and posted it on my social media feed, thanks to the florist for wishing us a happy 3rd anniversary. That night, to my surprise, Ji Hanchuan actually came home on time. He was holding a familiar blue velvet box in his hand, the latest model from Cartier. 3 years, and he couldn't even be bothered to put much thought into gifts. Happy anniversary. He handed the box to me, his tone flat. I didn't take it. I just looked into his beautiful yet cold eyes. Ji Hanchuan, let's get a divorce. His fingers tightened slightly. Why? He asked, his voice still calm. I took the prepared divorce agreement from the coffee table drawer. 3 years. I finally realized you don't need a wife. You just need an ornament that won't cause you trouble. Ji Hanchuan put down the jewelry box, picked up the agreement, and flipped through it quickly, his frown growing deeper. When did you prepare all this? 3 months ago. I sat down across from him. Ever since the day you left me at home and went to Lu Yuan's wedding alone. He looked up at me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Just because of that? Because of every little thing over these 3 years. I took a deep breath. You don't remember my birthday, you don't care about my job, and you don't introduce me to your friends. Ji Hanchuan, what exactly am I to you? He threw the agreement back onto the coffee table. What do you want? More money? Higher social status? Say it. Whatever I can give, I will give. This was his way of solving problems, throwing money at them. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. See, even now you still don't understand. I want respect. I want care. I want the most basic love a husband has for his wife. Ji Hanchuan's expression turned dangerous. Don't be so naive. Our marriage was a transaction from the very beginning, and now you want to break the contract. Ling Er. No. I shook my head. I'm just choosing not to renew the contract. I pointed to the last page of the agreement. I don't want anything. I just need your signature. He stared into my eyes for a long time, then suddenly sneered. Do you think divorce is that simple? The G Corporation is currently discussing a merger with Huashan. You want to cause a scene about divorce at a critical moment like this? I took out another document from my bag and slid it over to him. Don't worry. I've already drafted a statement. I've also talked to people at Huashan. We'll say it's an amicable separation due to incompatible personalities. It won't affect your business plans. Ji Hangchuan took the document, and his expression darkened as he quickly scanned through it. You even prepared this? He snapped his head up. Wait, last week President Zhang of Huashan suddenly agreed to sign the contract. Was that because of you? I offered a faint smile. President Zhang's daughter and I were college roommates. She just introduced us. Don't worry, it was strictly business. I didn't mention anything about you. He slowly lowered the document, looking at me as if truly seeing me for the first time. When exactly did you start planning all this? I've been planning since you wouldn't let me attend the wedding, I said calmly. Since every time you left me to sleep in an empty bed. Ji Hanchuan's expression grew complicated, a mix of anger and a hint of panic I had never seen before. Where are you going to go? Your father's company hasn't gone bankrupt yet. I've already cleared the debt, I interrupted. And you might not know this, but after my investment company's Series B funding last year, I made enough to buy the apartment I'm currently renting outright. His lips trembled slightly. You've been working all this time? Yes, in that little project you never bothered to ask about. I stood up and grabbed my suitcase, which had been packed for ages. My lawyer will handle the divorce settlement with you. I wish you the best. Ji Hanchuan bolted up and grabbed my wrist. Wait, his grip was tight enough to make me wince. Ling Jin, you can't just leave like this. Just like what? I stared straight into his eyes. Leave without saying goodbye just like you used to do to me? His hand released me as if burned. I pulled my suitcase toward the door, glancing back at him one last time before shutting it. Ji Hanchuan, that arrogant and favored son, now stood in the middle of the living room looking like a lost child. The click of the door closing was soft, but it marked a definitive end to our marriage. Ling San, my first meeting with Ji Hanchuan happened because of a business arrangement. My family's situation had deteriorated, and we desperately needed someone to prop us up. Back then, I was young and rebellious. To avoid the arranged marriage, I traveled everywhere. Finally, after I was caught trying to run away for the 16th time, my dad was so furious he smashed a teacup against my suitcase. Ling Jin, do you think this is a game? He roared. Do you have any idea what kind of mess our family is in, and you still try to run away? I tilted my chin up stubbornly, refusing to back down. Marriage, marriage, marriage. What century are we living in? I'm not doing it. I won't marry him. My mom sighed beside him. Her tone was gentle, but her words cut deep. Your best friend, Susu, was forced to have dinner with a balding 40-year-old real estate developer last week. I heard he even has an illegitimate child. The only daughter of the Chen family had it worse. She was shipped off to a 50-year-old creditor to be a replacement wife. I stayed silent. Damn, talk about adding insult to injury. My dad sneered. Look at you, being so ungrateful. I picked Ji Hanchuan, the crown prince of the G Corporation, for you. He's young, handsome, and countless women are breaking down doors to marry him. Yet here you are throwing a tantrum. I argued stubbornly. Who knows if he's short, ugly, and gross? What if he's bald? What if he has bad breath? My parents exchanged a glance, ignored me, and walked away. Meet him at the Hyatt Hotel this weekend, my mom said just before closing the door. If you dare run away, I'll cut off all your credit cards. I stayed silent. On the weekend, I deliberately wore no makeup, dressed in baggy sweatpants and a hoodie, carrying my bag. I snuck into the Hyatt Hotel like a thief. Yes, I didn't run away. It wasn't because I was obedient, but because I needed to see what this potential husband looked like first. If he was old and ugly, I'd break off the engagement even if I had to climb out a window to escape. I slipped into the reserved private room and looked up, instantly freezing in my tracks. A man in a sharp suit stood with his back to me by the floor-to-ceiling window. He had broad shoulders and long legs. Even his back view was breathtakingly attractive. Seeming to hear the noise, he slowly turned around. My mind went blank with a boom. Holy shit. High nose bridge, deep-set eyes, cold brows, and thin lips pressed into a line that radiated a chill, ascetic air. Was this a blind date? He looked like a male model who'd just stepped off the cover of a magazine. I stood there stunned, completely forgetting that I was there to sabotage the meeting. Ji Hanchuan glanced at me indifferently, his brow furrowing slightly. Are you from the Lin family? I nodded my head frantically, my voice sounding airy. Why, yes. His eyes lingered on my messy sweatshirt for 2 seconds. Then he pulled out a chair expressionlessly. Sit. I stayed silent. I'm done for. Is it too late to regret this now? Throughout the entire meal, I was absent-minded, staring blankly at Ji Hanchuan's devastatingly handsome face the whole time. His every move exuded an air of pampered nobility. Even the fingers he used to cut his steak were long and elegant, with distinct knuckles. I gulped, suddenly recalling how my best friend Susu had cried to me last night about her blind date's bald head and beer belly. I shuddered all over. Should I just forget it? I struggled internally. Being handsome really can sustain a person, right? Just as I was hesitating, Ji Hanchuan suddenly looked up, his gaze locking directly onto me. Is Miss Lin dissatisfied with me? I blurted out reflexively. No, I'm very satisfied. I wanted to slap myself across the face the moment I said it. He raised an eyebrow, the corner of his mouth rarely twitching upward. Then regarding the marriage, I immediately chickened out, mumbling softly, can we maybe try dating first? Ji Hanchuan stared at me for 2 seconds, then suddenly reached into his suit pocket, pulled out a document and slid it across the table. It was a marriage agreement. I don't have time to try. His voice was flat. We get married directly. I widened my eyes. That urgent? He lifted his gaze. Are you unwilling? Looking into his deep eyes, my mind went blank with heat, and I grabbed the pen and signed my name. Lust has blinded your mind, Lin Jing. On the day we registered our marriage, I stood outside the Civil Affairs Bureau wearing a white dress, thinking in a daze, was I played? Ji Hanchuan stood next to me, toying with a fresh red booklet with his slender fingers, the corner of his mouth turned up slightly. Regret it? I shook my head instinctively. No. Actually, I was regretting it deep down to my guts. What happened to hating arranged marriages? What happened to I'd rather die? And yet, one handsome face completely tamed me. He reached out and rubbed my hair, his tone rarely gentle. Let's go home. Tisk. So, being handsome really can sustain a person. The day we signed the papers, I followed Ji Hanchuan back to his apartment in a daze. The apartment was huge, decorated in a minimalist style. It was as cold as a model room in a magazine, but at least it was clean and tidy. Ji Hanchuan carried my suitcase with one hand and pushed open the door to a bedroom for me. You live here from now on. After saying that, he paused, then added, if you need anything, tell the butler or me. I stood at the door and peeked inside. The room was painted a gentle beige tone. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window was the city night view. And there was even a plush throw pillow on the bed. This goes completely against Ji Hanchuan's cold persona, doesn't it? Did you set this up on purpose? I asked softly. Ji Hanchuan gave a faint hum. Without offering an explanation, he turned and walked toward his bedroom. I blinked. Thoughtful coming from him. Life after marriage, honestly speaking, was far better than I had imagined. Ji Hanchuan was indeed considerate. Every morning before he left, there was always warm milk and sandwiches waiting on the table. No matter how late he returned at night, he would text me in advance. On weekends when he was home, he would even cook a full meal himself. His culinary skills were average, of course, but seeing him chopping vegetables in an apron, it was so handsome I couldn't help but shovel in a few extra bites of rice. But gradually, I realized something. Ji Hanchuan's gentleness had boundaries. He never got angry. He never spoke harshly to me. He was always polite, like the perfect husband. But this perfection was too precise, as if he were following a programmed script. He never initiated holding my hand. He never introduced me to his friends at gatherings. He never asked about my job, my friends, or even my past. It was as if we were living under the same roof, yet existing in two completely different worlds. So, you've been married for 3 months, and he still doesn't know you work in investments. My best friend, Susu, bit down on her straw, her eyes wide in disbelief. I slumped over the table at the cafe and sighed. He probably thinks I'm just a housewife with nothing better to do. Susu was quiet for a moment before asking suddenly, Lin Jin, have you actually fallen in love with him? I froze. He is my ideal type, I said slowly. Handsome, rich, gentle, and considerate. It's hard to find a flaw. But, I raised my head, my voice sounding a bit tight. He doesn't love me. Sue didn't say anything else, she just gently held my hand. That night, Ji Hanchuan came home early, which was a rarity. I was sitting on the living room sofa binge-watching a show when he walked over and handed me a small box. A gift, he said. I opened it. It was an exquisite diamond bracelet, a classic Cartier design. Expensive but not flashy, it really suited my taste. What's the occasion? I asked with a smile. Ji Hanchuan paused, seemingly caught off guard by the question. After a moment's hesitation, he said, I passed by the store and saw it. I thought it would suit you. The smile on my face faded away. Thank you. I closed the box and set it down on the coffee table. He frowned slightly. You don't like it?
No, I love it,
I said softly. It's just that I suddenly realized I've never told you what kind of jewelry I like. Ji Hanchuan fell silent for a second. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end he just nodded. I'll take you to the store to pick one out next time. Just like that. He could always satisfy my material needs in the most appropriate way, yet he never tried to understand who I really was. On the weekend, I packed a few clothes, preparing to stay at Susu's place for a few days. As I passed the study, I heard Ji Hanchuan on the call.
Right, has the schedule for next week been finalized?
His voice was as calm as ever. I'll review the merger documents tonight. I hesitated for a moment, but then knocked on the door anyway. He looked up. The person on the other end seemed to still be talking, but he had already muted the call. What is it? I'm going to stay at Susu's place for a few days, I said. Ji Hanchuan nodded. Do you need a driver to take you there? No need. Alright, stay safe. He didn't even ask why. I tightened my grip on my backstrap, suddenly feeling incredibly exhausted. Ji Hanchuan, what kind of marriage is this, really? He paused for a second, then his expression returned to calm. Are you unhappy with the way things are? No, I took a deep breath. Never mind, it's nothing. Just as I turned to leave, I heard him call my name, Lin Jin. I looked back at him. Ji Hanchuan stood there, his slender silhouette backlit. I couldn't make out his expression. Come back early. That was all he said in the end. I finally understood. What Ji Hanchuan gave me was never love. It was a gentle cage, Ling Liu. Ji Hanchuan's perspective. The first time I saw her was at a boring business banquet. That night, I was on the terrace smoking when I suddenly heard an argument coming from around the corner. A man was gripping the wrist of some heiress, refusing to let go while saying some filthy things. I frowned and was about to step in when I saw a flash of red charge over aggressively. Let her go. The girl in the red dress yanked the man away. Where do you think you are? She wasn't tall, but her presence was strong, like a kitten with its fur standing up. The man looked ugly as he raised his hand to push her. I instinctively took a couple of steps forward. But before I could intervene, she had already stomped on his foot, grabbed her friend and ran. As she ran past me, she hurriedly nodded a thank you in my direction. Her eyes were incredibly bright. Later, I found out she was Lin Jing from Lin's real estate. Later still, I received the marriage proposal. When my father placed the documents on my desk, I intended to refuse immediately. That was until I flipped to the page with the bride's photo. The girl in the photo had bright, expressive features and a bold smile. I stared at that face for a long time, suddenly realizing it looked familiar. It was her. I'll meet her, I heard myself say, but I didn't expect her to be so resistant. The report my assistant handed over showed that this girl had run away 16 times in the last 6 months. The last time she had even bought a ticket to the Maldives, only to be dragged back by her father's men at the airport. I watched the video my assistant put up, seeing her pouting indignantly as she was forced into the car. I couldn't help but want to laugh. But my smile faded quickly when I realized she genuinely hated this arranged marriage. Go tell the Lin family, I said, setting down my fountain pen. We will meet at the Hyatt Hotel next week. When she appeared at the door of the private room, I almost didn't recognize her. No makeup, a hoodie and jeans. She wore an expression that said, I'm only here to crash the party. She was incredibly cute. I watched her expression shift from fierce and aggressive to completely stunned. And I suddenly had the urge to pat her head. The young lady of the Lin family? I asked, keeping my face cold. Sit. At the Civil Affairs Bureau, her hands were shaking as she signed the papers. I guessed she would regret it later, but it didn't matter. Once she signed, she was mine. I admit I played a few tricks, but who asked her to be the one to make my heart skip a beat first? On the first day of our marriage, I woke up at 5 in the morning. I sat on the bed thinking for a long time before finally pulling out my phone and searching how to be a good husband. The first answer, give your wife enough respect and personal space. Understood. And so I prepared a separate bedroom for her. I maintained a polite distance and never overstepped my bounds. Rule number 2, remember her preferences. Understood. I asked my assistant to comb through Lin Jin's social media accounts. I found out she liked Cartier bracelets, had a sweet tooth, but was always on a diet, and loved watching mindless idol dramas. I noted down every single detail. Rule number 3, be a considerate husband. That was simple. I started warming up milk for her every morning and sending her timely messages at night to let her know my schedule. I even downloaded a recipe app and tried my hand at cooking on weekends. Even though I burnt 2 steaks, she still finished them. I thought I was doing well, until the day I overheard her on the phone with her best friend. It feels like living in a high-end hotel, her voice was weary. Even the waiters are warmer than Ji Hanchuan. I stood at the door of the study, the concert tickets I'd bought for her still in my hand. In the end, those tickets went into the shredder. She started visiting her best friend's place frequently. Every time I asked, she would just smile and brush it off. I began suffering from insomnia at night, scrolling through web pages titled How to Maintain a Marriage, yet finding no answers. Ji Hanchuan, what kind of couple are we really? She asked me that day. I wanted to tell her that I really liked her. I wanted to say that I was learning every day how to be a good husband. I wanted to ask her to teach me, to show me exactly what I should do. But in the end, all I said was, come home early. She didn't come back. I waited in the living room from 2 in the morning until dawn broke. The housekeeper told me she only came home in the early morning, creeping into the guest room quietly, as if afraid of waking me. She would never know that I hadn't slept a wink. After that day, I distanced myself from her once again. She seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, her eyes clearly saying, finally, things are back to normal. It turned out that my affection was just a burden to her. I deleted the recipe app from my phone and stopped checking her social media updates. Since she wanted mutual respect, I would give her the perfect business marriage. Yet, in the dead of night, I couldn't help but think back to that day at the Civil Affairs Bureau, the look she stole at me after signing the papers. It was bright and sparkling, like stars. 07, Ji Hanchuan's perspective. That night, when she brought up the divorce, I was still reviewing documents for a merger case. She stood in the living room, her expression calm to the point of indifference, when she handed me the documents. Her fingertips didn't even tremble. I thought to myself that she must have rehearsed this scene in her head countless times. Ji Hanchuan, let's get a divorce. My first reaction was one of absurdity. Was this just another mood swing I failed to understand? But her eyes were too calm, so calm that the hand holding my pen stiffened uncontrollably for the first time. Why? I heard myself ask, my voice as calm as if I were discussing a standard contract. She laughed, a smile filled with sarcasm. It's been 3 years, Ji Hanchuan. Do you really even know me? Know her? How could I not know her? I knew she liked strawberry ice cream, hated rainy days, liked to hug a body pillow when she slept, and would secretly wipe away tears while watching idol dramas. But as she listed, one by one, all the moments I had ignored when she spent her birthday alone. When she was sick but didn't want to disturb me, when her investment company was facing a crisis and I remained completely oblivious, I suddenly realized that what I knew was only ever the side she wanted me to see. The day she left, the house was terrifyingly quiet. I hadn't realized that without the sound of her footsteps, this home would feel so empty. I sat on the bay window where she used to love reading and found a notebook she had left in the drawer. Inside, she had recorded every difficult decision from the first year of her startup. In the corner of one page, there was a faint line. Today, Ji Hanchuan didn't come home for dinner again. In that instant, I almost crushed the notebook in my hand. I thought I had given her enough freedom, not realizing that what she truly wanted was the simplest form of companionship. 3 months after the divorce, my assistant handed me a report. Miss Lin's new project has run into some trouble. The Shenyuan Group is applying pressure behind the scenes. I stared at the performance report for her company over the past 3 months, and my heart tightened sharply. Every step she took was more difficult than I had imagined, yet even more stunning. Take care of it, I said, closing the file with a cold tone. Don't let her know it was me. My assistant hesitated, wanting to speak. President Ji, if you get out. Later, I started seeing news about her family frequently. Lin Capital completes Series B funding, valuation exceeds 1 billion. Rising investor and editor-in-chief Lin Jin named to the 30 under 30 elite list. I would read every report carefully, then replay those thoughts over and over in the dead of night. What if I had asked just one more question back then? How was your day today? What if we could have just sat down and had a proper meal together? What if? But there were no what ifs. I could only clear obstacles for her from the shadows, as if doing penance. Sometimes when the car passed her building, I would ask the driver to stop for a moment so I could gaze from afar at that brightly lit tower. She was no longer the girl who needed my protection. And I finally understood that love was never about mutual respect, it was about clumsily, yet with all one's might, trying to get closer to the other person. Unfortunately, I realized it too late. There 8. Your perspective. 6 months later, I sat in my office, organizing the proposal for a new book. The past few months hadn't been easy, but I had finally adjusted to living alone. Occasionally, I would wake up in the middle of the night and habitually reach for the empty space beside me in bed. But soon, I would tell myself, it's okay, everything is slowly getting better. Editor Lin, someone is here to see you downstairs, my assistant said, poking his head in. His expression was a bit odd. It's Ji Hanchuan. My hand paused for a moment, then I closed the documents. Tell him I'm busy, he said. He'll wait. I took a deep breath, stood up, and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window to look down. Sure enough, Ji Hanchuan was standing in front of the building. His black bespoke coat accentuated his tall figure, and his hair was slightly messy. I thought he would be like before, relentlessly sending messages, blocking my way, or even using his business influence to interfere with my work. But for the last 3 months, he had actually been quiet. I thought he had given up. I gritted my teeth, turned around, and headed downstairs. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up, as if he had finally recovered something precious. Lin Jin, is there something you need? I had no intention of exchanging pleasantries with him. I'm very busy. He stared at me, his gaze dark and intense. I know. Then why are you here? Lin Jin, he suddenly took a step closer, his voice low and hoarse. I miss you. I froze, then laughed after a long pause. Ji Hanchuan, do you really think that just because you say I miss you, I should throw myself into your arms with gratitude? He didn't say a word. He simply reached out to touch my face, but I took a step back, avoiding his hand. It's over. I looked him straight in the eye. Don't come looking for me again. His breath hitched. His eyes held a mix of disbelief and suppressed anger. What right do you have to make decisions for me? And you? I countered. In the last 3 years, how many times have you made decisions for me without a second thought? You came home when you wanted, disappeared when you pleased. Whatever you liked, I had to like too. Whatever you hated, I had to accept without question. You never treated me as an independent person. I paused, letting out a cold laugh. Ji Hanchuan, you don't love me. You're just used to being in control. His pupils contracted sharply, as if struck in a vital spot. His thin lips pressed into a tight line, his fingers curling into fists. But in the end, he unclenched his hand and said, in a low voice, a response I never expected. You're right, he said with a bitter smile. I really am a bastard. 2 years later, when my new book, Farewell to the Cold Winter, became a global bestseller, a reporter asked, Miss Lin, is it true that this book is based on the real story between you and the financial tycoon Ji Hanchuan? I smiled. Yes, but no, do you have any regrets? I looked out the window at the bright sunshine and said softly, no, because some roads must be walked alone. 冷酒. Camera flashes flickered constantly before my eyes. I sat behind a long table, smiling as I answered the reporter's questions. This book launch had come sooner than I expected, and the media's curiosity about Farewell to the Cold Winter far exceeded my anticipation. After all those sharp-nosed entertainment reporters had already sniffed out the semi-autobiographical nature of the book. Miss Lin, you wrote in the book, some love is not lost to time, but defeated by waiting. Are you referring to you and Mr. G? I gently stroked the book cover in my hands, not answering immediately. The spotlights were blinding. I could almost imagine how many people watching TV or online right now were waiting for my answer, including him. Ji Hanchuan, will you be watching? Yes. I looked up with a smile, but not entirely. The reporters below erupted into an uproar. The scratching of pens against notebooks filled the air. I paused before continuing. Love is never black and white. Sometimes regret isn't about who made a mistake, but simply that we were too young. Just then, a young female reporter wearing glasses raised her hand. Miss Lin, I heard that you recently. She hesitated, as if weighing her words carefully, are about to enter a new stage of your life? The air seemed to freeze for a second. I closed my eyes briefly. When I opened them again, I was calm. The PR director next to me looked at me nervously, seemingly wanting to intercept the question, but I just gave a gentle wave of my hand. Yes, I said frankly. I will be getting married next month. Click, click, click. The entire room erupted with the sound of camera shutters, far more intense than before. At the same time, 30 kilometers away at the G Group headquarters, Ji Hanchuan's perspective, the large screen in the office played her press conference on mute. When the assistant pushed open the door, Ji Hanchuan was standing before the floor-to-ceiling window, holding a glass of whiskey. The ice had melted by a third. Mr. G. The latest merger case requires you. The assistant's voice cut off abruptly as he followed Ji Hanchuan's gaze to the screen. Lin Jin's face was exquisite and distant in the camera lens, and the live caption at the bottom clearly scrolled. Author of Farewell to the Cold Winter, Lin Jin announces engagement. Crash. The glass smashed onto the carpet, the liquid splashing onto the hem of Ji Hanchuan's trousers. The assistant stood frozen, terrified. Ji Hanchuan slowly turned around, his face terrifyingly pale. He didn't bend down, nor did he call anyone to clean it up. He simply stared at his assistant and asked softly, You knew she was getting married? His voice was terrifyingly calm. Cold sweat broke out on the assistant's forehead. No, I wasn't sure. I just heard she was close with a young master from a family in Europe. Ji Hanchuan said nothing more. He walked back to his desk and braced his hands against the surface. He closed his eyes and took deep breaths for a long moment before slowly sitting back down in his chair. Look it up, he said. Information on that man. The assistant looked on the verge of tears. President Ji, get out. The assistant closed the door as if fleeing for his life. Less than 10 minutes later, a detailed file was sent to Ji Hanchuan's computer. The moment the screen lit up, his fingers hovered over the mouse, trembling almost imperceptibly. Inside the opened PDF file, the man's information unfolded. Xiao Yu, 32, of Chinese descent. PhD in political economy from Cambridge. The actual power behind a century-old European art auction house. His family has businesses in Italy and Switzerland. They have a deep background, but keep a low profile. He has never appeared in any negative news. The file attached several photos, his elegant and composed posture as he raised his paddle at an auction, his politeness as he leaned forward slightly to speak with someone at a charity gala, and his focused profile as he earnestly examined a painting at a private art exhibition. Then there was one more. At the outdoor seating of a street corner cafe, the moment he wiped a streak of milk foam from the corner of my mouth. There was a light in my eyes, and my smile was so relaxed. Ji Hanchuan's gaze was nailed to that photo, and his breathing gradually became unsteady. He scrolled the mouse down to see the additional information below. Social reputation. Xiao Yu is humorous and gentle, an excellent listener, and has an outstanding reputation within the circle. He met Lin Jin at a literary salon 2 years ago and has since appeared frequently with her at the same social events. Relationship details. The trajectory of their relationship is natural, with no signs of a business alliance. According to insiders, Xiao Yu has publicly stated, marriage should not be a union of interests. Ji Hanchuan squeezed his eyes shut. President Ji, the assistant carefully pushed open the door, holding a stack of physical supplementary materials. This is everything I could find. They really do seem well-suited. Well-suited. Ji Hanchuan suddenly laughed, a low raspy sound that sent a chill down the assistant's spine. He released the mouse, leaned back into his leather chair, and raised a hand to cover his eyes. It felt as though a dull knife was slowly grinding through his chest. So this was the love she wanted, gentle, equal, and always responsive. Not his self-righteous version of giving her space. So there really was someone in this world who could effortlessly possess the happiness he had tried so desperately to give yet failed to deliver. President Ji, do you want to investigate further? The assistant asked tentatively. Perhaps financial transactions or something? The sunlight slanted in through the window. Ji Hanchuan's hand rested on the desktop, his fingertips pale. No need, he said. Just let her live well. The assistant watched in shock as his boss stood and walked to the window. His silhouette was lonely, like a tombstone half buried in snow. All night Ji Hanchuan sat alone in the silent office. On the screen Lin Jin smiled as she always did, and with trembling fingertips he tapped open his phone album, which held countless photos he had secretly taken of her. The way she slightly frowned while reading. The way she glowed with radiance during her speeches. Her gentle smile when surrounded by readers at a book signing. None of it belonged to him anymore. The wedding. From the dome of the church, pure white floral vines cascaded down, while sunlight filtered through the stained glass, casting colors over the guests' formal attire. Wearing a satin wedding gown, I walked step by step toward the altar. The groom extended his hand toward me, and I smiled as I placed my palm against his. The music swelled, and the guests watched us with smiles. Suddenly, a faint commotion arose at the entrance. I didn't look back, nor did I pause, but in the moment before the priest spoke, I lifted my gaze. Looking toward the very back of the crowd. Ji Hanchuan stood there. He didn't have an invitation, yet he had come anyway. He was thinner than he had been 2 years ago, with dark shadows under his eyes. His suit was expensive, yet he exuded a cold desolation. Quite a few female guests nearby had noticed him, casting secret glances his way. But he was only looking at me. The instant our eyes met, he seemed to want to smile, but the corner of his mouth merely twitched slightly before settling into a silent stoic restraint. I watched him quietly as if regarding an old friend, and then I nodded gently. Finally, his eyes reddened, and tears fell in silence.